Testing, testing. Welcome, survivors. This is Eerie Knight of the Pseudo Posse, and we're back with another highly requested video that I've seen a bunch of people ask in recent video comments. How to build a base to handle direwolves. They are an absolute menace, especially in the early game since they can spawn in early hordes. With 3000 base health, 60 base damage, that is a lot to confront early game when you are armed with primitive weapons and under armored. However, they do drop a guaranteed red loot bag, so you actually want the ability to kill it safely while also getting immediate access to the loot drop before it despawns. That is our mission statement. Design an early game horde base, and also a later one for funsies, that allows you to fight the direwolf safely and secure the red loot drop without losing it. Can't get more straightforward than that. So if you're looking for an incredibly easy and effective way to achieve these goals, you've stopped by the correct corner of YouTube. Let's get started. We're going to begin our journey with a quick callback to our previous video on zombie AI behavior. Go check that out after you're done here if you want to deep dive into the inner workings of zombie decision making. Link in the description. But what we want to do is show this little clip right here. All zombies will prefer the shortest, easiest path of least resistance, which for regular zombies includes ladders. However, if given the choice between ladders and stairs, zombies will always pick stairs unless the ladder path is considerably shorter. In the case of direwolves, they only have one option: the stairs. No opposable thumbs, you see, so they can't climb ladders. Thus, even if the ladder path is shorter, they don't care because they can only go the stair route. Okay, callback done. Back to business. Our plan is simple as it is diabolical. Here's our early game horde base. Don't worry, we'll go over a general build guide later on, but for now, we're going to cut to the concept. Direwolves are beefy and strong, and if they are attacking us along with every other zombie, we could get overwhelmed. Thus, the plan is to separate them from the rest of the horde using ladders and an alternative, longer path. Because the ladder path is much more direct, 98% of zombies, give or take, will follow that path, and it doesn't take a long ladder to deter the direwolf. This one is only 2 blocks high. The other path takes an extremely inefficient way toward the base, which most zombies will feel is too much work. Not the direwolf, as it has no choice. It can't go the ladder path, so it has to come here, thus isolating it from the rest of the horde. You will get the occasional dumb zombie running along this way, but that is what the doors are partially for. Yoink! The other reason for the doors is if you ever feel like you're getting overwhelmed, you can drop them when you choose to, which is why we are using doors. A zombie dropping shape like the ramp 6m03 will automatically drop them, which isn't what we want, as we also want to secure that loot bag if you recall. That way, once we get the direwolf inside our trap, we kill it, eventually. It does have a lot of hit points after all, and after it dies, the loot bag drops on the door with no way for it to fall, or get pushed off by other zombies as they rarely come down this path. And even if they did, the walls on the sides prevent the bag from going anywhere. So while we're fighting the wolf, or before it even spawns, what are the other zombies doing on the other path? Well, while we are occupied, they will follow this loop up the stairs and ladder, across the pillar 0.5 meter plate with window arch top trim, and finally over the pillar 0.05 middle and pillar 0.05 meter half side center shapes at the end. Once they reach the scaffold ladder barricading the path, they will fall through the gap formed by the pillar 0.05 meter half side center shape and run back up a different set of stairs to repeat the loop. That was a mouthful. When we are focused on them, they'll still do the loop, except we have plenty of opportunities to engage them. We can use our arrows or gun from a distance to hit them while they jump over the window arch top trim. Zombies won't fall off this section of path, but they will be slowed down by the trim as they'll need to jump over it. The trim is not a pathable shape, whereas the pillar 0.5 meter plate is zombie pathable. But since the plates are directly underneath, zombies will still see it as a path. The purpose of this design is to not drop zombies, but to make them easier targets to shoot at. It is a very effective addition to any horde base where you are looking for a way to slow down zombies without using electric fence posts to get easier headshots. Okay, once they do pass this section, we can still shoot at them as they approach the scaffold ladder. Once they reach it, there is a chance they'll fall through the gap formed by the pillar 0.05 meter half side center shapes. We only created a single single gap, as we want them to reach the end to put them into melee range. So either they fall down of their own volition, or we help them to fall down or outright kill them by the stabby. Until the direwolf becomes a threat, we can easily handle the horde via ranged or melee. And once the direwolf comes, the base can handle itself while we divert attention to the four-legged creature. This base, or something like it, can be built easily for the day 7 to 14 horde. The design can vary, but the core concept is to create two paths, a shorter ladder path and a longer non-ladder path that leads to a door. The door will allow you to drop zombies in case of emergency, but also save the direwolf loot bag when it drops. Here is a quick how to build guide. This won't be too in-depth, as we've made this early day horde base available for download, which can be found in the video description via a Google Drive link. So if you're a new player especially, feel free to download the PI and follow along with the build instructions while examining it. Start at the beginning of the zombie path with some stairs. Use whatever stair shapes you like, but I used the ramp incline in the center and the stairs hollow on either side. The ramp filler is required on the backside to build the stairs higher. Once you are 3 blocks high, fill in a bunch of cube blocks to make a small platform from which we'll make a 2-block high ladder. Connect a few more cubes to the ladder and some ramps on either side to taper down the path to a single block width. Up next is the pillar 0.5 meter plate path. You'll need 2 plates for each window arch top trim, as it takes 2 arches to make an enclosed barrier that zombies will drop into and need to jump out of. I'll support that on either end with a pillar, and from there, connect pillar 0.05 meter middle shapes. Don't need too many of them, more will give you more time to shoot as they run towards you, but I want to keep the path short so I can make the alternative direwolf path not as long to save on materials. I use 2 blocks. At the end, put 2 pillar 0.05 meter half-side center shapes to form a gap in between. Support from the other side, this will ultimately be the fighting platform. The fighting platform can be whatever shape and size. Depends on if you are solo or playing with others, or if you want room to hold any storage or make it a livable space. The key feature to include here is the door. You'll want to place it off your platform like this, so that when you open the door, it creates a path. I placed 2 for redundancy. Now, I did accidentally use iron doors here as I constructed the mid-game base first, but I replaced those with wood as you don't necessarily have iron doors for the first horde, though it is possible you could. Then it is a matter of building some walls and a roof and some scaffold ladders for the pillar path and the door path. Now, I made a mistake here. I accidentally connected my alternative path above the ladder, which defeats the point of making it direwolf accessible. So I eventually had to go back and readjust that by removing the pillars and putting in some stairs connected to the lower platform. Anyway, this route needs to be longer than the first path. I'd make it at least 1.5 to 2 times as long to make sure most other zombies won't follow it. You can use whatever pathable shape you want for the path. I opted to go with the pillar 0.5 meter shapes with pillar 1 meter columns capped with simple cubes, but you can really do whatever you like here. Lastly, we want to give zombies dropping from the main path an easy way back up to repeat the loop. The initial stairs are kind of far away, and to better ensure they turn back around to repeat the loop, we will add another set of stairs closer to the drop zone. For those, I decided to use the wedge tip stairs 01 and the wedge stairs 01. Simply alternate between them and fill in cubes when you need to go higher. And that's that. Easy and effective. Alright, if you've gotten all the inspiration you need at this point, go forth and build, good buddy. Don't forget to like the video and sub if you haven't already before you head out. But if you'd like to see what a higher game stage horde base might look like, check it out. Again, we'll walk through the base and at the end do a short build guide. This base, like all of our other featured builds on the channel, will be added to the pool of bases our Patreon members get to vote on every month for the opportunity to download and use. This horde base has many of the same features and uses the same design philosophy. Originally, when I was working on this base, I was intending it to be an early game horde base, but as I tend to do, it kind of grew into something too large, which is why after finishing it, I had to go back and do the early base you just saw. The reason I mention that is I would have done some things a bit differently if I intended it to be a later game horde base from the beginning of the build, but we'll get to that as we go through. We'll start at the bottom of the stairs, and instead of doing the ladders right away, and we go a bit higher and are faced with both paths. Following this pillar 0.5 meter path will take us all the way around, bypassing the window arch top trim pillar 0.5 plate path and ladders, and instead leads right to our familiar door setup. Inside we have a larger fighting platform with the scaffold ladder in front of the pillar and door sections. We also have an overview of the pillar 0.5 meter arch path through the pole 4-way shapes, since this path is no longer in line with the pillar gap path. No reason you couldn't keep the path straight, but when I was originally building this for an early base, I was wanting to build it as compact and as high as possible while conserving materials. The main path for the rest of the Horde is pretty much the same concept except for the pillar plate and pillar gap walkway being at right angles. There is another feature here intended to help with the zombie rage mechanic. At that point in the build, I still wanted to make it an early game Horde base. So instead of making the fighting platform at least 15 blocks above the ground, I opted to build a platform below the pillar gap path to shorten the fall distance to either prevent some rage, or if they did rage, they'd beat on the platform rather than anything important. In other words, a rage distraction device. If I were to build this again with the intention of it being a later game Horde base, I would have built higher or kept the same height and dug a pit deep enough to give me an effective 15-meter drop. But I chose this approach instead, and after I decided to just make this a later game Horde base, I didn't go back and tweak the design because I wanted to highlight the usefulness of this approach to handle anti-rage. It does require more upkeep and isn't as effective as building higher or using electric traps, but it is a decent short-term option to deal with raging zombies. All of this being said, the base functions the same as the last one. Horde comes up the path, falls, and repeats the loop, all the while I can shoot melee or throw consumables. One advantage of placing the pillar 0.5 meter plate path in front of me that I can more easily throw Molotovs at it versus the early game design, so that's one bonus. Other than that, it is extremely effective base design that can be upgraded and expanded upon as you progress through the game. And of course, the main feature of the base, the direwolf path, works like a charm as before. Wolf comes up, chooses the only path available, and comes right to our door. Fortunately, at this point, he is much faster to eliminate with better weapons, and we can pick up the free red loot bag after it drops. Not much else to say, except that the base works extremely well against the Horde, and isolates the direwolf from the rest to easily take it out and grab the reward. Alright, as promised, let's go into the build guide. I'll call out block shapes and various building tips along the way, so let's begin. Also note, I built this with cobblestone, but later upgraded to concrete after I decided to make it a later game Horde base. We'll start in much the same way as we did with the early base, stairs leading to a cube platform. I did add ladders at this point in the build, but you can ignore those as I ended up putting the ladders elsewhere. At the bottom of the stairs, I recommend to angle them to make zombies less likely to beat on them, so adding in some stairs fill diagonal 2 pieces will suffice. Using the same shapes, I constructed some side stairs similar with what I did in the early game Horde base. Originally, they were going to be used in the same way as a quicker path up from the drop zone, but ultimately I changed the design to route the path to the right. Anyways, it is always a good idea to have redundant stairs in case something gets destroyed. Next, use pillar 1 meter 6-way as our column base, just for aesthetics, and put some pillar 1 meter shapes on top. Once we reach the height we want, top it with a cube and fill in the space with half cubes. Ultimately, we will replace a lot of this with stairs, but if you like the look of the design, certainly keep it. Finally, let's taper down the path to a single block using the ramp half stairs 0.5 meter filler. In general, we're going to use the pipe corners for any change in direction of the path and the pillar 0.5 meter for the straight sections. Once you've made it to the desired length, time for the pillar 0.5 plate path, topped with the window arch top trim. I only made this one 4 pillar plates long with only 2 gaps formed by the arches, as I originally intended this to be an early game base. But if I were to redo it for the late game, I would have made it 3 to 4 arch gaps to give myself a bit more time to get some headshots and juicy Molotovs. At the far end, support it with another column. On the ground below the pillar plates, I decided to place some half cubes to slightly lower the fall distance and to provide extra stability to the ground once cops started to spawn. Nothing like a bad cop explosion to chew through the ground. On the edges, I used cube half ramps to make a gradual slope from the ground to the half cube blocks. Here's where I decided to remove the ladders at the beginning and replace with stairs. Ultimately, I wanted the ladders further down as I wanted to route the direwolves from the higher platform. On the other side, I am using the same shapes as we've used thus far to construct a platform that will support the new ladders. The only new shape to call out here is the tube 3-meter corner, just for a different block aesthetic. Now time for the aforementioned ladders, here 3 blocks high. If I were to build this again, I would have built the ladders higher to achieve 15 block height from the ground. To support the platform at the top of the ladders, I used the same tube 3-meter corner shapes we just used and connected to those the cube 1/4 meter, and from there to the ground, the pool side centered. I repeated the same pattern on the other side to form an arch and to fully support the platform from both sides. It will also eventually support the direwolf path. Okay, time for the pillar path leading to the fighting position. Start with the pillar 0.05 meter middle and the pillar 0.05 meter half side centered. Like I mentioned before, I chose to deal with the raging zombies with a platform below the pillar path. Nothing super special, just used the same block I've used for pillar supports the entire time with full cubes on top. Then I used the same stairs hollow shapes and ramp pillar to run it to the ground. Lastly, I reoriented the original side staircase as it is facing the wrong direction. Zombies can now maneuver more easily from the platform down to the stairs and back up the main path. For the main fighting platform, I kept up the same pillar aesthetic. I've been using and decided to make my entire base foundation out of the pillar. Nothing fancy, but better than just using full cubes in my opinion. Low effort, but looks better. Okay, time for the direwolf path. Eagle-eyed viewers will have noticed that the path looks a bit different at the start. It is missing the connection from the top of the stairs, but we'll get to that momentarily. Anyway, the key takeaway from the construction of this path is to use the pillar 0.05 meter shapes to support our direwolf path and keep it suspended with no supports to the ground. Since I was worried about zombie rage, I didn't want to give them anything to beat on when falling on our platform. We are using these shapes in particular as they are not zombie pathable, so zombies won't try to cross them. Even when directly supporting these from the base itself, zombies won't see these as a path and instead follow the intended one. This is a trick I use a lot in my base builds whenever I want horizontal structural support. We're going to wrap this around the building to make it long enough for other zombies not to follow, which will ultimately lead to our door. Now again, eagle-eyed viewers will have noticed this path is longer than what you saw in the Horde footage. That is because when I initially did a Horde, it worked really well, but the direwolf would not follow the path, instead opting to beat on the foundations. As I've seen people in previous comments from other videos ask about why this happens in their base designs, I thought to keep this in the video to help them out. Basically, the path was too long for the direwolves to want to travel, and thus would rather beat on the foundations. So I found an approximate point in which the direwolf would be willing to travel and made the door set up around that region. This setup is done in the same exact way as the early Horde base. Make a cube wall, attach a door, though this time just a single door as we are using iron now versus wood, and scaffolds to block off the entrance. Also, why did I change the start of the direwolf path? Because too many zombies collect along the pillar plate path, thus making it congested for the direwolf to reach us. Thus I routed the direwolf away from it by putting the direwolf path further up. At the junction, I used the pipe T-joint and the rest of the blocks are what we've used previously. Okay, last thing for the fighting platform. Add the scaffold ladder in front of the pillars and the pull 4-way in front of the pillar plate arch section, so we can get a good line of sight to the zombies. The rest of it is pretty easy, just walls and a roof, and you're done. All said and done, I am happy with how it turned out. Though as I have mentioned, I would have done things a bit differently if I designed it as a later game Horde base from the outset. Namely, I would have made a 15 block drop height, removed the fall platform, and would have made the pillar plate arch section path a bit longer. But even without those improvements, the base worked incredibly well. Hope you all learned a thing or two, and if so, give the video a like and subscribe to join our little band of nerds and builder enthusiasts. Don't forget to tap the bell for notifications so you don't miss out on the next one. Last but not least, shout out to our amazing Patreon community. Thank you all so much for your continued support. It means the world to Taco and I. Alright, Eerie Night over and out. See you all in the next one.